One of the things I love about what I've done and what I would love to do more of is building high performing teams. Sort of, it all first starts with, does the team or do the members in the team have a clearly articulated shared vision? Do they believe in it? Do they believe in the vision? Do they believe in the purpose why they exist? Do they believe in being able to be successful with what they've got among them, right? Then the next thing is, do they feel valued? Do they believe they are genuinely part of that? These days, people think about driving commerce not only through a physical entity, whether it's a store or what have you. It's just not going to a website or an app on your phone or your Echo or Siri, speaking to you. There are different ways. Think about even Meta, sort of exploring the AR, VR moments. However channel the commerce hits you, how can they all be sort of unified? How can you start commerce one way, take it on to the next? How does the customer service experience in one realm understand what's happening in the other? AI breaks those barriers and puts a subtle, seamless, yet powerful thread in between. So I see those three getting together and pushing the boundaries of what AI can.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Scale Up Podcast. In today's episode, we have Vijay Sankararaman. Very excited to have him. He's a transformational technology leader, has held high-level positions with some of the world's largest companies, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's on the retail side, and then Sprint as well. He has a ton of experience, obviously, in this long career with such kind of such a successful progression, pretty much all areas of technology. I'm sure when he started, we were probably doing client server stuff, but obviously with the latest innovations, he's got like amazing expertise in generally in automation, in cloud technology, and off late obviously with AI and ML, and with with this executive oversight, delivering high impact business outcomes. He has worked obviously with from what we know at a very detailed level. Probably, I don't think he's still coding, but I'm sure pretty close to that level, trying to stay close to the low level stuff in tech, as well as walking up to strategic talk that is common among C-level people, right? So it's very unique to find somebody who's able to go from that high to this low, and then back in the, just walk through the spectrum of this tech ladder, if you will. He's amazing. We've spoken to him a few times, and really happy to have him. Vijay, great to have you.
Weston, thank you, and really appreciate your warm introduction, and love to spend the next few minutes with you, chatting about my experience. But before I start, I just want to also extend the introduction to you, as in to your point, to the extent of conversations we've had and I've had with your team. You represent, that I might say, one of the best novelties out there. I mean, be it in the age of AI that we are in, what you and your company bring to the table, the experience and sort of the tech prowess you bring to the table is commendable. And I wish you well before we conclude this call over the course of time. But love to chat more.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vijay. Thanks for the kind words and appreciation. Means a lot to us. So, we wanted to start off with maybe a very high level question. You have led digital transformation efforts in companies, like, a lot of them in the Fortune 50, and also, through your private initiative on the advisory side and whatnot, to in with some startups too. How do you see the are you able to like cull out some universal principles that help you kind of navigate your let's say process, regardless of the size of these companies?
Yeah, no, Baston, that's a very thoughtful question to begin with, right? I think from what I have sort of seen and I continue to see, regardless of the size of the company, whether to your point, if you're a Fortune 50, Fortune 100, or you are a startup that is obviously looking for the next window to sort of move yourself up through the public exit status, if you will, there is a common thread that generally seems to cut across, and I sort of generally look them into three things. The first and the foremost is what exactly sort of moves for the clarity of outcome. And what I mean by that is, naturally, The successful ones, the ones with the driven purpose, are the ones who sort of start with the question why. As cliched as lately it seems, companies sometimes lose track of it, but the successful ones are the ones who keep that clarity of outcome. What is the problem you're trying to solve and why we are trying to solve? Clearly demonstrated through a variety of ways. KR's been one of the more easier ways to do it, or clear ways to do it. But means aside, we can talk through it. That's the first thing. Then the next one is customer centricity as your ethos. There could be lots of companies who sort of have their genuine vision, mission, and the purpose what they do with, but then wired in all of that is the core existence of the company, how they render a product or a service or a combination. How are they preserving that customer centricity? How are they executing their strategies, if you will, that connects the dots between why they do what they do and how does that sort of touch the customer? And the last thing is ultimately gets back to the inner self of the companies. We refer a lot of times to individual leadership. We want to be self-aware. It's a good old management trait. Now the same thing applies to the teams and organizations and in the companies too, right? How self-aware are they to understand and empower their members, the employees of the companies, who sort of can pay it back in terms of bringing the leadership out.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Like, um, setting outcomes and having focus around that, and then empowering your team to sort of like come up with ways to get to that outcome, those outcomes rather. Amazing. Yeah. We also talk about that, the whole plan and people aspect, right? Like, you set up your plans in as clearly as you can, and outcomes are obviously the best way to do it. And then unleash your people, and come up with good processes to get to those outcomes. Amazing, great. I mean, I wish I had known this when I started some of these initiatives companies. It's a lot more easier. It's definitely natural for some people. um, and it obviously takes a little bit longer with larger companies. The agility aspect is a little bit difficult to get to, because you have a bigger brand to worry about. You can't make put something out there and try, which startups sometimes do easily, right? Like, the whole Eric Rice, I mean, all those guys, the whole thing is about, like, okay, just you may not even continue to keep your first 5 customers.
Absolutely. No, you said it well. Eric Ries in his startup of you very clearly sort of, outlines what you talk about where, do you know why you exist?
Yeah.
And is that clear? Is that message clear across, everybody, who's in the organization? And you're right, Baston. If it's a large Fortune 50, 100 organization, the ownership lies on senior and mid-level management to bring that message, trickle
Right.
it down effectively all the way through. And if you are a smaller startup or and a nimble organization, if you will, how do you keep that sort of energy across despite different sort of things thrown at you, and everybody who's onboarded in your fabric gets that?
Yeah, exactly. So how is I mean, I guess AI is everywhere. Last couple of years I've been out, 3 years I've been really faster. I mean, we've been making faster progress with the LLMs and SLMs and everything else. So how do you see AI? I mean, cloud obviously has been there for a longer time, and I think most of these larger companies are now, cloud is pretty de facto. We also see this, like, when we talk to customers, we say, oh, when they ask us, how is your which cloud are you hosting yourself in? Oh yeah, we are in Google. What kind of security measures you take? We say, oh, we've taken a lot of measures and all these certifications, but if you have a problem with it, we can also host in your this thing. They'll say, oh, no, we don't really need it. We are comfortable with cloud, is something that we hear commonly these days. So how do you see these transformations? And especially on the AI side, it's really early, really, and a lot of the contracts that we get from larger companies call that out separately, special attention to those. Like, so what's been your experience, your strategic, I guess, like, thoughts in terms of the next 5 years?
Yeah. See, it's fascinating. You're right, Baston, these days. Almost inescapable getting into any conversation, including the one that we've always had and this one, to not talk about AI or the impacts of it. Surprisingly or not, AI or the terms and phrases that sort of touch around it have been with us for a reasonable amount of time. Now they've probably taken different manifestations, but to your point, speed at which how AI has now started to advance or permeate much more deeper cells of the business, if you will, has just exploded in the last couple of years. And obviously, thanks to some of the LLMs, and in fact, you use the word cloud, that has helped a lot too. Having said that, part of how when I look at companies, when I advise, or part of when I look at companies that I've been directly leading and looking forward to, I usually put them into, when I look at AI, I look them into three different aspects, how they touch the business aspect. First and foremost, as we continue to graduate from otherwise a predictive AI, which is great multivariate problem solving and all that fun stuff, into more autonomous agentic path we are going, hyper personalization is just going to simply take a center stage, right? How do I know as a retailer, as a distributor, or as a consumer company or a manufacturer, whoever I am, how do I get to know more about you? How do I get to know more about you as an individual, as another company of mine, or my supplier? That hyper personalization now then tailors solutions what I have more closer to you. I significantly facilitates that. The next thing I see is the intelligence in operations. Now, of course, we've always been through in the last decade or so, the last mile delivery has taken off, thanks to Amazons and the Walmarts and just about everybody who sort of, followed suit. Clearly, the robotics, whether it's fulfillment operations or a physical operations, wherever it is, has taken on. Think about Industry 4.0 and smart, IoTs and all that. But now with deeper pairing of AI with the physical nature of it, the digital meets the physical nature of it, the cliched digital, if you will, is much more real, right? The growth of digital twins is just only going to rapidly extrapolate so that there's a level into it. And lastly, it's the, I call it uni-channel experience, right? These days, people think about driving commerce not only through a physical entity, whether it's a store or what have you. It's just not going to a website or an app on your phone or your Echo or Siri, speaking to you. There are different ways. Think about even Meta, sort of exploring the AR VR moments. However, channel the commerce hits you. How can they all be sort of unified? How can you start commerce one way, take it on to the next? How does the customer service experience in one realm understand what's happening in the other? AI breaks those barriers and puts a subtle, seamless yet powerful thread in between. So I see those three getting together and pushing the boundaries of what AI can do.
Yeah, no, that's amazing thought. Um, uh, yeah, no, the uni-selling, that's interesting. Yeah, uni-commerce.
Yeah. Now, having said that, Baston, there is one thing I would underscore, right? I mean, we've always been with technology and we will be, and that's only going to be growing at a pace. But there is one thing that I believe we should all do to stay ahead. It is investing in the people, investing in the people who can understand what the AI can do, what it cannot do. And there are different levels of learning. I mean, there are for the ones who want to be deeply, investing in sort of, getting themselves, if you will, into significant improvement in product engineering or what have you is one thing. But even for a business leader, a marketing leader, or a finance expert in a company, how can they get themselves more equipped with the explainability? So, how can leaders in AI, leaders in technology, build the level of explainability? So, when an agentic AI orchestrates a set of processes together, threads it together, how best can we make it easier for an everyday business leader or a transactioner, if you will, to understand why those choices were made? So, we call it explainability in AI. How can you, the successful ones will be the ones who can make the explainability in AI easier.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a very interesting point you brought up. Like, especially with we are doing some agent, development, and the ability to understand clearly like what is going on and explain to ourselves that okay, so this is why exactly the LLM is interpreting this in this way. Sometimes it's very, I mean, obviously, like you say, it comes with experience, many times, and like you change something somewhere, and then the results are so different, dramatically different, and certainly that skill will have to be developed and honed. You talked about investing in people, and then we also talked about planning, in terms of outcomes, and then essentially unleashing your people with empowerment. So there's obviously you've built teams, you've led large teams in big corporations. I mean, what are the challenges? I mean, it's easier said than done in terms of obviously, as setting outcomes and then empowering people and so on and so forth. But what kind of challenges you faced, and how do you see? I mean, yeah. Well, what would be your advice to somebody, for example, growing into your role in terms of this, people empowerment planning and the challenges associated with it? More on the challenges.
Yeah, that's a great point you make, Baston. And I'll also touch on, we use the word high performing teams. In fact, one of the things I love about what I've done and what I would love to do more of is building high performing teams. Now, if you break, or peel the onion, if you will, a little bit, the way I see what it takes to build a high performing team, which is the essence of what you're asking, sort of it all first starts with, does the team or do the members in the team have a clearly articulated shared vision? Do they believe in it? Do they believe in the vision? Do they believe in the purpose why they exist? Do they believe in being able to be successful with what they've got among them, right? Then the next thing is, do they feel valued? Do they believe they are genuinely part of that fabric? Do they believe their voice carries a distance within the team, right? Regardless of the title they carry, regardless of the realm of physical locations they may be in, do they feel democratic enough that their voice carries? Which opens the other conversation around psychological safety, right? Am I free to say what I want to say? Of course, within the guardrails of the company's ethics, if you will. But having said that, am I free enough to express myself without the fear of retaliation from anybody else? And last but not the least, communication, right? It comes down to, there are, communication means slightly different things to different people. Some people are much more expressive than the others, but regardless of your style of communication, are you able to get the right forum within the team to do so? When all those things come together, you've got a high performing team.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, obviously the whole, setting the, right goals or outcome based targets. And I mean, that is the starting point, like doing those things right. And then obviously building the right team with the right people, both in terms of capability and attitude. Right. Like, I mean, those things obviously help. But then, like, I always talk about Francisco 49ers, like in 2011. They were 8-8, I think, in 2010. And then Jim Harbaugh comes and takes the team, the Stanford coach. And then he didn't change anybody in terms of the playing personnel. None new. It was Alex Smith at quarterback, same set of people, just the coaching staff. Obviously, he brought his own coaching staff. They went to the Super Bowl right away. I don't know. They didn't win anything. They went to like 2 Super Bowls or 3 Super Bowls, but multiple, playoff appearances. And, that's what I talk about. I tell, when I tell people the whole, the coaches effect. If you do that, well, that would be amazing. So the ingredients were there, but then, it requires, solid leadership as well, to put the thing together, if you will.
Yeah, no, you said it very well. I think one of the things, Bastin, I also sort of, and your example of 49ers is a great one that that I can attribute to what I'm going to say now. It's one of the things I do is build a culture of disruptive innovation tech product teams. Now, I'll date you back a little bit to, the late Professor Clayton Christensen from Harvard Business School. Back in the day, he had coined the concept of disruptive innovation. Simply put, disruptive innovation, for the audience here is no more, no less than, an upstart or a seemingly less privileged competent, less privileged teams, or, cutting through the barriers of otherwise an ironclad business and finding ways to get there. I mean, the good old examples of Netflix sort of, cracking the code on, the rentals, or we can go example after example. Same thing applies to teams as well. So especially from a technology side, you think about product-led companies and groups in it. You got massive projects, massive programs with millions, if not even billions, if you will, pouring into it over a multi-year project. A small, nimble team trying to accomplish what they want to accomplish sometimes seemingly doesn't work well. But when you can have that, to your point, that mindset of having the high performing team, the fabric that woves them together, and bring that element of disruptive innovation, that curiosity and that verve to get there, can break that sound barrier of can this nimble team do it? The short answer is yes. And that's what the disruptive innovation tech product teams do.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. In terms of, I mean, I think during the late 90s and even mid 90s too, it was probably a little bit more common for people to study whatever is interesting to them and then move to tech because of the opportunities available. So, I mean, I was just interested, curious in your journey, like how did you move from, good background, I'm sure, on the chemical engineering side to tech leadership, and I guess like what sort of like motivated you to take that switch, and I guess like what is your advice to people who would be in a similar boat today, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good little trip down the memory lane, right? So end of the day for me, look, as I started my career with engineering, chemical engineering in particular, one of the things that I observed, learned, and sort of chose to build upon it is all about an objective framework. How do I make decisions with data that I can synthesize, with data that I can gather and piece together? That's the fabric of engineering. The analytical mindset, as they call it, is the cornerstone, as I learned in engineering. And that's, to me, was a very transferable skill that is sort of built on what we call as first principles thinking, right? You sort of break everything down to its most finite grain level, understand what could be the reasoning behind it, and then structure that together. So it helped me formulate, sharpen first principle thinking and a data driven objective aspect of it. As I moved more into technology leadership with the product management, omni-channel supply chain, all that fun stuff that I picked up along the way in a relatively still younger career that I believe I've got, what I learned from all of that is it is one thing to process data, process intelligence, and then put that together. But it is something else to bring that to the team of teams. As you very well know, Baston, and you and your team are probably a great example of it too. It's a team sport. Technology is a team sport. As good as an individual contributor each of us have been or could be, it works well in a creative way when we sort of put all together. So how do I bring that? How do I draw a level of inspiration that I can bring it to the team of teams, so that each and every one of them can become a beacon of their own in the plays they make, and then translate that to successes, and sort of take it from there.
Yeah. Definitely. I think definitely the transferable skills part is absolutely there. I was a mechanical engineer, and I actually wanted to, like, many people said, "Oh, why don't you join computer science because you're good at it?" And I said, "Well, I don't have to go and learn that in college. I can just learn that on my site." This thing, interesting, yeah. So, I mean, going a little bit deeper into AI and supply chain, right? Like with your expertise in supply chain, like if founders or some, let's say, folks who want to do their own thing are listening to this, what are some of the exciting opportunities you see for AI in supply chains?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? See, ultimately, whether we look at AI or cloud or agentic or any other advancements that we have seen, it's always the good old question that I like to ask is a hammer looking for a nail? What I mean by that is ultimately AI, cloud, what have you out there, or tools in a toolkit for a company ultimately to solve a problem. I equate problems to sort of nails out there in a company, right? Yes, you need a hammer to go, put that down, as opposed to walking with, oh, hey, I've got a Gen AI framework. What problems do you want me to solve? Flip the narrative to the other way around. What are your top three problems? And then how do you want to go solve for it? Using that lens, when I look at, value chain across any of these companies out there, one of the biggest, things to solve for this age, with the way the global economy tends to play out and shaping itself. It's always the working capital. I mean, naturally, whether you want to carry inventory, whether you run trucks, or whether you are a manufacturer of sort, and you want to know how much to build and hold and move through your value chain, all things that is capital that is being plucked out of, either your cash reserves in the company, or you've taken a loan of sort or what have you. It's all working capital. So the question is, effective can you be, if you're running a supply chain, how effective can you be in terms of, maximizing that capital? Companies have nice terms for it, and there's an obviously return on invested capital and all that fun stuff. Then the question comes, in your ultimate goal to maximize the capital, how effectively can you predict what's coming your way? How effectively can you predict the demand? We've all seen, in fact, arguably that is one of the more top Gen AI use cases out there, right? The whole demand forecasting and all that. Without doubt, that is the leading one that, 7 in 10 companies, as they say, have got it, which still opens a door for another 30% at least to sort of, get past that. Then how effectively can you predict movement? You got multitude of vendors shipping things to you. You got multitude of, portfolio that is sort of moving around. How effectively can you track and trace that? How effectively can you translate a change? We still are reactive in most cases. We still are reactive enough to say, hey, something is going to be coming on time or late. But the moment you announce something is late, you're already reactive. How can you, in this case, if the problem is to move the cursor more to a proactive needle, how can Gen AI or agentic forms of it can help draw intelligence across and do it with speed? Now you throw scale at it, Baston. You got companies. It's not a one purchase order. It's not one vendor. You're now talking a variety out there, and you start throwing in the tariffs and the changes that is happening virtually every day these days. How do you reason out? And that's kind of where some of the more evolved AI systems these days can do a better job of reasoning and rendering that in the form of decision making out. That's what I would tell, to sort of leverage those problems.
Yeah, loud and clear. I mean, I guess like focus on the basics, right? Like essentially is what you're saying. Like, look at the numbers that matter, KPIs that matter, and then, look at ideas around them. Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Staying on supply chain, you've seen obviously the tech side of the retail world, but like, what's the one thing that you'll say most leaders sort of like miss or overlook when it comes to digital transformation, if there's any that you've seen like commonly across?
Yeah. I don't know if I would use the word overlook, but perhaps I might slightly downgrade it and then maybe even call it, give a cursory care to it, right? That to me is basically the people mindset. What I mean by that is, look, when you go through transformation, Bastion, you know this very well, digital transformation, there is a heavy element of ingestion of data, processing of intelligence, technologies that have to go through, automation that has to sort of cut through. More importantly, companies who do these digital transformation, cut through or revive themselves from yesteryear processes. Whether you want to do a brownfield transformation or a greenfield transformation, which is even more harder, you still have to cut through the processes, create novel processes. All this requires the people who are doing the functions and whatever functions they are doing to be able to do differently from what they have been doing. And that requires an element of understanding and an element of acceptance and get through it. So naturally, when companies go through digital transformation, they do apply change, they do have a change organization, but how early and effective and how empowered, speaking of the empowered product teams.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, totally. We were thinking about a good number of our audience obviously are like startups, and like you've done some work with the Walmart labs on emerging tech as well as evaluating venture funded companies, and I believe you guys also take part, or at least when you were there, take part in rounds. Like, how do you evaluate, like from a corporate standpoint? Many of these founders obviously go to traditional like venture funds which have a certain way of looking at things, but when you're doing it from a company, you have strategic priorities and strategic alignments and so on in your mind as well. How do they sort of fit in your portfolio in some ways?
We generally literally try to fit them all, if I may say, in a simple phrase, fit for scale. And what I mean by fit for scale is, Look, whether you are a startup, sort of, have at least been in a place where you've done few prototypes in the past, and approaching a larger company like a Walmart or like a who have you, the uniqueness in the product or the service you bring to the table, how does that fit? How can that fit the larger, rather a bit more ambiguous and a kludgy ecosystem that the company is going to throw at you? How are you going to fit is your product? I'm talking beyond just let's go beyond just the APIs. I'm talking much more in terms of contextually, how does that fit? And then lot of them are prototypes, pilots, experiments, which is, we all love that, just to get the taste of the recipe or test the waters, what have you. But then how quickly can they scale from a cliched hockey stick point? How quickly can they scale, or their inhibitions, constraints in scaling? So essentially, it's a matter of, when you bring your product or service to the table to an entity which is larger, and large here, the size is not just in that. The size is, I'm talking about larger ambiguity, and the heterogeneity that they bring to the table. How can you fit to scale?
Great, great. Thank you, Vijay. Thank you so much for all the wise advice, and we believe that we've been able to get all we could get from you so far for our viewers, and would love to touch base with you, maybe in about a year or so, to learn more about like how things are and how things are going and so on.